Hello guys, my name is Spiros Katsis and today we're going to see how we can easily create a value object using C#'s records. Now, what's a value object? Well, as the name implies, it's an object that just holds some values. It doesn't have any functionality. Why to use value objects? Well, if we're talking about domain-driven design, regularly you want to use value objects when you have models that they only hold the properties and they don't have any functionality, because that leads to anemic models. Another use case, it's to use it instead of primitives, because primitives sometimes they are not just primitives. For example, an email is a string, but is it just that? Is any string a valid email? Well, I guess it depends on the context of your application, but it's really not. So, for example, in our solution, I have in my domain a customer entity with a string full name and an integer age. But in our application, which I guess it's a kind of product selling app, we only serve customers older than 18 years old and younger than 60, because what we are selling, it's, let's say, legal for underage people or people over the age of 60. So our age, it's not just an integer. So we will wrap it to a value object. So let's go and create a folder called value objects, and in there let's create our age value object. Okay, that needs to be a record, and we'll see why it's very easy with records. And now what we need to declare here is a property with the name value, since it will hold the value of that age. We don't want to expose a setter. We will have that value set it only through the constructor, so we can validate what we need to validate. So let's create a constructor. Okay, and now we need to say that if that value is greater than 60, or so greater than 60 or smaller than 18, and let's use the pattern as writer suggests. And now we need to throw a new exception, and let's say age can only be between 18 and 60. Obviously you may want to have your own custom exception for that in a real application. Anyway, so let's go back to our customer, and instead of an integer, let's say that that age is of type age. Now we have some problems with this approach, because now if we go to our console, okay, let's create a new customer. So var customer equals with new customer, and let's create a constructor actually to make that easier. Okay, new customer, and let's say the name is Spiros and the age is 5. Well, we can't say 5 because age it's not an integer now, it's a record, so we have to say new age of 5. Okay, now if we have another customer, let's call that customer 2, and let's say it has an age of, actually let's make that 25, because that will throw in 26. And then let's say we want to compare their ages. So if customer dot age greater than customer 2.age. That will not work because they are records, they aren't integers that we can compare. Now, how can we fix that? We need a way to say that every time I use the age, I want the value of the age, not the record itself. So you could say that, okay, that something like that could work, so let's cast that to an int, so customer.age, and cast that to an int. That could work if we do some work, but why to explicitly say that it's time? What we need is to implicitly say that. So we will go back to our age and we will create two implicit operators. So let's go and say public static implicit operator of int, and now we want to get an integer every time we try to access the age. So we will have the age as a parameter in an implicit operator, so age, and as we said, we need to access the value, so age.value. And we also need it the other way around, so let's go and say public static implicit operator again of age, and now we will take the age and we will return a value object. So new age, and okay, and now if we go back, now we can remove that new age over here and just pass the 25, and because of that implicit operator, it will see that 25 in here the age, and it will create a new age object. And for the other way around, if we now go and have an integer value, for example int age, we can just set it to customer.age, and that will compile and work too. Finally, we can have now our comparisons, so customer age, customer 2.age, and if that's true, and let's make that to be true, let's have it print something, so console write line true, and okay, we can, we can just take that and put it in here. Alright, let's see if that works, let's run it. And it prints true because it is true. If I say the other way around, it will print false. Excellent. And that's all you need to do to create a value object using C# records. And it's actually very easier than what it used to be with classes, and that's mainly because records are from their nature immutable, and when you want to compare two objects, you compare them by their values by default, and as you know, that's not the case with classes. Anyway, I don't want to make that too long. That was a simple guide about how to quickly create a value object. So thank you for watching and have a nice one.